Hello,
Welcome back to
Cineboys, Cinemen.
long hiatus, but we felt new year, new us,
Yep.
the return, the
Absolutely.
ascension.
Yeah, we're back after about fair few years, 2 or 3 years, and
Yep.
we thought we'd effectively it's going to be once every fortnight, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems realistic
Yeah.
for people like us to
Yeah.
maybe aim for once every 2 weeks. So that's the sort of current format that we're going to be, or time frame, I want to say,
Yeah.
that we're going to be using moving forward.
Hmm.
What are we doing this week, though?
This week we're talking about Avatar: The Way of Water,
Oh, very good.
which is obviously the first one, grossing over 2 billion to I think 2.93, something like that.
Which back then was a huge deal.
Oh, insane. Like, previous to that it was Titanic, which was about 1.84 billion,
Mm-hmm.
which in itself was like a behemoth. And then Cameron kind of came back about 12 years later and just kind of blew everyone out of the water. And he's trying to do it again.
He is in a landscape, now that is, if we just dial the clock back to the release of Avatar 1, that's a film that had huge seismic implications, not just for the way audiences engaged with films, but the techniques that filmmakers use to facilitate that engagement.
Yeah.
CGI, mocap, or motion capture.
Yeah, facial motion capture. Which was
capture.
like previously. I mean, with something like Gollum, a lot of people don't know this, but his face was entirely hand animated. But with Avatar, they basically put dots on people's faces as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just it was like, as well as it being like a huge film in its own right. Technologically, it did kind of snowball things a little bit, and brought everything to this point.
It is, which is an interesting point of discussion, which we'll do after the break, which is how does this film, with all of its technological brilliance, and Cameron himself sits in a landscape which is now dominated by the technology that he helped pioneer.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's do it.
Fantastic. Excellent.
Questing the cinematic void.
Right then. Modern cinema. Touched on it earlier in the intro.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say the use of that technology, the aforementioned technology pioneered by Mr. Cameron himself,
Yeah.
using the term ubiquitous would be a sort of maybe underselling how much it is used now, this kind of technology. Certainly in contemporary or more contemporary, or the last sort of 10, 15, 20 years, blockbuster cinema.
Yeah, and more specifically, this came to my head, just Marvel, the way that they
That's basically what we're
effectively,
saying.
yeah. Because, going back to motion capture quickly, Marvel films will literally not design any costumes. They will just add the costumes afterwards, and it's like easy for them to do that, and it's actually really cost effective for them to do that now. Whereas pre-Avatar 2008, they made a lot of like Iron Man suits and things like that, and this, it afforded a lot, in a weird way, a lot more creative control, because they could chop and change things months after they shot them, as opposed to having to commit to something pre-shooting. So in that, that's certainly one way that it's changed the landscape.
There's a practical element to it, isn't there? I think, like you said, the cost-effective nature of using such technology, it saves you from shipping, all the equipment, material, costumes from one place to another. There's a practicality to it, which
Absolutely.
I guess is part of the reason why it's so popular now.
Yeah.
But there's also a sort of way in which that it allows filmmakers to, take their ideas, take their narratives and ideas, should I say, to bolder and better new places. In theory, that's sort of, I guess, why so many people are bewitched by, or were and continue to be bewitched by, this kind of technology.
I'd immediately sort of jump to a more negative part of this process, which is they also have the ability to change their minds really late in the game.
Right, yeah.
And it does mean, industry-wise, like a lot of visual effects artists, there's no secret that they're like overworked, underpaid, and there's like a problem there. And that's all because of, or maybe unshackling the restraints a little bit too much.
Okay.
That's just something that I've heard has become a problem that previously was never an issue.
Yeah, I also think there's a problem with the way it is utilised.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to talk about this and how Cameron does utilise this technology. Even if we're not always sold on aspects of how Cameron uses it, and we'll discuss that later on in the podcast. There's at least an attempt from him to sort of use it as a way to sort of characterise his setting, to use it as some sort of propulsive narrative and thematic device, which in Marvel films, I would argue, and I think you're probably on the same page with me about this, I think we've talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
It seems more as a device for spectacle.
Yeah.
To sort of quickly paper over the cracks of any sort of a lack of nuance in their storytelling. I mean, people who are into Marvel films might see that as like me sort of laying into them, but that's not. I'm just saying it purely from a perspective of, at the end of the day, these films are built to get as many people as possible on seats.
Yeah.
And the way you facilitate that in the modern era is by spectacle.
Yeah.
And I think the use of that CGI has allowed that to happen, but almost to the point that it's almost become almost impossible to imagine a film of a certain budget not existing without there being a significant amount of blue screens and white dots on people's faces. And do you think it has cheapened the use of the technology?
Yeah, I think actually what sort of happened is it was done. I think it was done really well especially for 2009. I rewatched Avatar recently, the first one, and it does look really good, even on my like shitty telly at home. Sorry, Hannah's family who gave us the television. Love it. It's lovely. But it's not the most modern piece of equipment in the world, and it still looks really good. It holds up. Mm-hmm. The texture on the skin looks really, really nice. And then I don't know what happened. It just sort of, the way that it progressed from there kind of went weird. Visually, I think, went downhill.
Yeah, I agree.
And to the extent where you get action sequences that could literally be cut out of one film and placed into another, and you wouldn't even really be able to tell.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because it started off so brilliantly, I think.
And if we're going to stay on Marvel, not sort of hit beat on it too much. But,
yeah.
I mean, going back to the idea about papering over the cracks of any narrative depth, I think if you think about some of the better Marvel films, I mean, not to sort of stay on Marvel because it's so easy to do these days. It's pretty boring, isn't it?
It's a big part of the culture.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. Some of the better Marvel films suffer for it.
Yeah.
The endings of every Marvel film has to have this explosive, and I almost feel like that technology facilitates that kind of like filmmaking by committee, approach to narrative. It almost always impacts those films negatively for me.
Yeah.
And that's why so many people, filmmakers included, are going back to more practical methods of special effects, which seems to have had a bit of some kind of revival, hasn't it? The last sort of like 10 or so years, people seem to be using it almost, as I think you said before before we started recording, so it's clear I'm not stealing it from you, this idea from you, but it's almost like a marketing trait now to say, we're using practical effects again, we're using puppetry or animatronics or makeup, where CG would probably be the better, faster, quicker, cost-effective option. People are still reverting back to that. Do you think it's because of the ubiquitous nature of it, because of films like Marvel, because of like Dwayne Johnson action films? Do you think that people, or maybe smaller groups of people, do you know what, actually, I've had enough?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's effective. There's a kind of fork in the road in terms of audiences, because I know a lot of people who are like big fans of big action blockbuster spectacle.
Of course, yeah.
And that's
done well, they're great.
Yeah.
Of course. But we're not ragging on, I just want to make that clear, we're not just ragging on them for the sake of it.
No, of course. But there's a reason.
Yeah.
And the other split, and I do mean a split as well, it's not just mainstream and non-mainstream audiences. It's both of them are mainstream audiences, and the other side of that is people are very keen to move away from wanting to watch the same chase or the same finale every single time they go to the cinema. And that's where I think the marketing aspect of using practical effects comes in, comes in really well and really effectively is that they're getting marketed towards this other fork in the road of people who are like, no, I want something different.
Yeah.
I want to basically go back and have the same feeling as when I watched Fellowship of the Ring for the first time, for example. Just seeing that craft and that sort of nitty-gritty, getting your nails dirty kind of filmmaking.
It takes cinema back to its roots, I guess, more for some people. I think there's that sort of idea that it's like... I'm sort of hesitant to say that having practical effects in your film instantly makes it good, because there have been plenty of examples that's not the case at all. But I think it's developed this sort of romanticised view of practical effects, which I think, again, as we've said, sort of dovetails with the marketing aspect and this sort of revisionist way. I don't know, this sort of idea that, you know, that by disavowing that kind of technology, I don't know, it almost makes for a more richer and more engaging experience, more akin to that sort of low budget, sort of more subversive style of filmmaking.
Yeah, which people can like really look at and appreciate, and you know, not have to look for the mistakes, because there's a lot of mistakes in CG, and a lot of it makes into the final product. 'Cause it's just such a vast, you know, involves so many different people. But with a film like, for example, Tenet, which I didn't hate. I thought it had its problems, but in terms of the way it utilised, the practical effects marketing. Like, do you remember for months people were going on about how they blew up a real aeroplane, and that was like a big.
All at the Dark Knight with the flip of the lorry.
Yeah, it was a real thing, but it was like it was a point
Yeah.
of interest. It wasn't just like, oh, that's how films were made. It was like, no, oh my god, they did that for real. And it's like, and it's another reason to go and see it.
A tangible element to it, I guess.
Yeah.
Which almost, I guess, means that by the sort of virtue of our discussion, that maybe the overuse of that technology, the CG, is affecting the artistic merit of it. And
yes,
that must be quite heartbreaking if you are someone that works in that sort of field, who's given thousands of hours to something that...
Yeah.
I don't know, it's a tough thing, because I want to value it for that reason.
Yeah.
Because it's incredibly hard and sometimes thankless work.
Yeah.
And it's not tangible, you're not on set running around, there's not explosions, and you're sat in a chair in a dark room. But it's hard work, it's not easy, and I think we have to give kudos to them, regardless of what their output ends up being.
It is easy to kind of rag on computer-generated imagery and how it looks in the end, but you do have to realise that it's made by a huge team of people who are working genuinely really hard most of the time, and like you say, it's just really thankless.
It is, because people they put their asses on the cinema chair, and they just expect to see that now.
Yeah.
You know,
it's not like...
don't realise.
Yeah, like, I mean, going back to even like Terminator 2, it was the opposite. People weren't expecting it.
Yeah.
And it happened, and they were like, holy, this is amazing. And then, like, obviously that being James Cameron, kind of leading nicely back into who we're talking about, he has over the years pushed it further and further with, a film like Titanic, which in itself had a lot of kind of technological achievements and advancements, like things like water simulations and photorealistic people. Actually, a bit of motion capture as well. Very early, really early motion capture. Very basic, like they were like sprites, basically, tiny little kind of lemmings.
Okay.
But it was based on actual movements of people shot against like a green screen, I think. And it's just funny how James Cameron's threading through all of this.
Yeah.
And
he's always been there, right? He's sort of the watchman, gatekeeper of this kind of technology. Maybe him and maybe Peter Jackson, maybe.
Yeah, actually, Peter Jackson's another really good one. He's certainly the humbler of the two.
Yeah, maybe. yeah. Although his use of it in films bothers me more than James Cameron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, and actually, especially his more recent work. Not his documentaries, but his films.
Yeah, agreed.
It's got really off-putting.
James Cameron, then. So a man that is someone that has earned the right, at least in mainstream cinema, to be considered a bankable and, for most people, well-respected filmmaker.
Yeah.
I know we've sort of discussed this beforehand. and I'm a bit lukewarm with his films after sort of True Lies.
Yeah.
But I know you're a big fan of Titanic.
Yeah. Unashamedly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But he is always someone that you can count on to bring the goods, even if he puts the studio under a great deal of stress to do so.
Yeah.
He has never really failed.
No.
Really, has he? I mean, has there been any sort of failures?
No, he's produced a lot which has gone wrong, but he's never been at the helm. When he's at the helm, he's actually like a really safe pair of hands, which is weird because when he was making Titanic, everyone thought he was going to fail. When he was making Avatar, literally everyone thought he was going to fail again. Mm-hmm. And even to a little kind of lesser extent with The Way of Water, everyone thought he was going to fail again. But people forget how good he is at making sequels as well, and that goes back to like Aliens and stuff.
Yeah, of course, Terminator 2, Aliens, yeah.
And he, I mean, I'll say this now, my personal favourite James Cameron film is actually probably Titanic. But that is maybe more because of a nostalgia reason.
It's just as valid, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. The way, to the extent where I know there's a lot of problems with that film, but I can easily ignore them to the point. And when people point them out, it actually kind of slightly hurts because I love that film so much. I'm just like, I don't care about it's really melodramatic or the door or the kind of the fact that it is basically Romeo and Juliet on a boat. Like, I don't care about any of that. It's like an amazing sort of 3-hour epic akin to like Ben-Hur or like Lawrence of Arabia. You know, it has has that sort of, you know, that kind of feel, you know, that scope.
It's definitely a film of broad operatic strokes, isn't it? Particularly the end.
Oh my god, yeah.
But I mean, that's Cameron all over. He is a man of broad operatic strokes. Even when he was limited by budget or by technology of the time, he has never failed to give films a sense of an identity through the technology that he utilises, through his design. I mean, he has a background in art, doesn't he, in art and design, and that shows in his films.
Oh yeah, big time.
And I think it's sort of, I guess Avatar was a perfect way for him, the original Avatar, I mean, for him to almost use that technology to, you know, really push that identity that he has to the absolute limit in terms of actually making a world.
Yeah.
We're not filming this in a jungle or whatever the sort of demands of the world that he's created require. We're filming this in a studio. So all of this is design work brought to life by our friend CG and motion capture. And that's something that I guess leads quite nicely into our discussion about Avatar 2 itself.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
is that if we think about its predecessor, in the sense that even though I'm again not that fussed about the original, one thing I can't fault him for is his effort and how he uses that technology to characterise the setting and as a sort of a more genuine narrative device, certainly by today's standards.
Yeah, I think he succeeded, if nothing else, in presenting us with a visually splendid and very tangible world, despite the fact that there's literally nothing actually tangible about how he shot it at all. And that's an amazing achievement. I've got some problems, like I'm sure you do as well, with the actual end result, the design. Just came to me now. Some of it looks like a level in like Halo. I always forget it just kind of like the result is just like, this looks like Halo. But then again, Halo could have been influenced by Aliens, which it clearly was, and then that kind of loops back to Cameron again. Who knows?
I mean, he's definitely the sort of Godfather influence, isn't he, for like sci-fi action cinema and video games. I mean,
mech suits.
It's sort of pervasive across all mediums, isn't it?
No,
I agree with you. I think let's just sort of go into little bits about this film.
About The Way of Water.
Yes, this film.
First thoughts.
First thoughts. If we're going to talk about design, I think my big issue with the first Avatar film in this and this one, is the design. I think we've spoke about how this tool is, you know, limitless, potentially limitless, and I just feel that so much of the design is reined in by how familiar. I know this is probably a bit of a sort of a minor critique, but it's like, I don't know, if you have so much freedom, why do you just like make a whale with two, you know, it's got 4 eyes now instead of 2 and an extra flipper, and he's really good at maths as well. You know, like, I don't know, like, I'm just not sure, like, if this design work, is it for thematic intention to sort of like establish a thematic link between his real world concerns about environmentalism, the destruction of indigenous peoples and populations and cultures? We'll come on to that later.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it just feels kind of a bit limiting that he would sort of ground it somewhat in a sort of fairly familiar design choices.
Yeah, it's odd to me that ultimately the only thing he's got under his hat that isn't familiar to us anyway is just like making stuff glow.
Yeah.
He does that a lot in the first film and even more in this one. It's just like, right, something alien, like you say, put more eyes on it, cool, more flippers, wicked. Can we make them glow? Yeah, if you want, James.
Yeah,
no problem.
Yeah.
You sure you don't want to maybe think about this a bit more? I've got out. No.
Yeah,
That's,
I mean,
it's strange, isn't it?
It is strange. I just feel like the criticism I've had about sort of many films are like Inception's another. Like it's about this limitless dreamscape, and it's all very familiar stuff. I don't know. I think that's maybe more to do with expectations placed by investors. Maybe don't go too out of it. Don't go too crazy with
too
it.
alien.
Yeah, because then that might put people off, which is something they don't want to do.
Yeah. Actually, this is going back to the first one briefly, but it does kind of tie in nicely to what we were discussing just now. Is he does want people to identify with the Na'vi, and so what he did is apparently they are they're not like mammals in the traditional sense, but he made them, especially with the women in the film, he gave them features that were perceived to be attractive to humans. So like, despite the fact that biologically they have no need for them, so it might be his choice.
Yeah, maybe it is a creative thing. And again, like we said earlier, maybe it is to tie in with the themes that we'll discuss a little bit later on. But I don't know. Like I feel like when you have so much creative freedom, it seems a shame to ground it in something that feels so familiar.
Yeah,
it's a nitpick. I admit that, but
no. I agree with you. I that was one of the problems with the first one, and even more so with this one, with the sequel. We'll talk a little bit about the script.
Yeah, I think Cameron, for me, is one of the best action script writers. I mean, if you want to read a script that unfolds the story perfectly by using dialogue as like a device, as a sort of propulsive narrative device. I know people thought that's what it's supposed to do, but someone that is just a master of it. If you just read like the Alien script, for example, it is just so taut and well written and concise, but at the same time it has so much in there to unpack. So for me, he's always been a bit of a sort of someone to look to in terms of his writing, certainly within that genre. But here, I don't know. I feel that there's some real.
Yeah, but we would. Weird. I mean, the first things I said to you after we left the cinema was like, first 10 minutes, dreadful.
Yeah,
from a script writing perspective, just awful. I think. Should we? Probably best to have discussed this before, but should we just warn people there might be some spoilers ahead?
Oh yeah.
If you haven't seen it, might be best to skip ahead.
Yeah, we're a bit rusty.
You
got to give us you got to give us some idea. Yeah, there were spoilers. Yeah.
So Quaritch is back from the first film. The way he was reintroduced was so lazy, like really just like. Why that? He doesn't need to be back either. It could have just been someone else that would have served the story exactly the same. He wasn't the best thing about the first one either. He was just like a kind of muscly marine,
which Cameron does well.
Yeah,
he does military grunt thing better than probably anyone.
I just thought that his character was like a bit of a gristlehead, and I was glad when he got shot.
Yeah,
but he's back. Why? I don't care.
Yeah.
And then the way that this is another thing I wanted to touch on. The whole of the first Avatar is about a group of indigenous people defending their home, the jungle, and they do, and it takes them 3 hours to do so. And then this one, they just have to leave really quickly, and it's explained away in like 10 minutes. So it actually, the sequel, from like a kind of narrative point of view, massively undermines the story from the first film.
Yeah, which is a shame given he's usually so good at that.
Yeah.
If you think about Terminator 2, it completely and knowingly undermines the first Terminator, but it does it in a way that he utilises the mythology that he's created to justify it, and it completely makes sense in that world. Whereas here, it's just all of the key themes of the first film. It makes the presence of the first film feel quite pointless.
Yeah, and almost intrusive.
Which to me is not the sign of a good sequel, personally.
No.
The use of bro a lot.
Oh my god,
was infuriating. I will say the characterization again. It's incredibly difficult to. It's hard to have an emotional connection, I should say, with these things because, it's just really difficult. It's hard because you know that it's not. It's all green screen. It's all mocap, and it's really difficult. And that's why you need a good script. You need. Things have to be tight in that department so you can do that.
Also, the actors, the main actors in it, it's really hard to distinguish their own features.
Yeah.
So their performances are massively lost in the motion capture, especially with the younger actors.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like you say, it becomes really difficult to identify with them and to feel any sort of emotional connection to them.
It's just, I don't know, like I felt the characterization of them. They to me were like new age hippie sort of types.
Yeah.
Like the kids, especially the younger characters. Bro, cuz,
yeah.
I don't know, like that just really grated on me throughout the whole film, and it sort of made me sort of just disengage. Yeah. It's like I have no issue with the ethos of the new age hippie thing, but it's just like the way it's applied and the way that Cameron uses that in his characterization, I think, was really, really grating to me.
It felt a little bit like they were too human, and they did that really strange thing about explaining really quickly. Oh, by the way, they're not speaking English, and they just faded out the subtitles. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
it's like what? Okay, and as I get, it's just the first 10 minutes were just so lazy.
Yeah, it was so poor.
Yeah, it did improve to an extent after that, narrative wise.
Yeah.
It did get better, and it wasn't ever, I think we can both agree, that it wasn't boring.
No,
it was
I wasn't bored. No.
Yeah.
I mean, I just sort of, I don't know, like I feel as lukewarm to this as I did to the first Avatar film.
Yeah.
Which is an opinion I hear a lot. I don't know many people that are like, the best film I've ever seen, and yet it, surely there are people that think that, given its sort of
box office.
The box office performance and
seems like the planet's favourite film.
Yeah,
but it is.
Yeah.
Everyone forgot about it.
It's like the sort of cinematic equivalent of U2.
Yeah,
Like no one knows a U2 fan, but they're ridiculously popular.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit harsh on Avatar, but or James
harsh
Cameron.
on U2.
Yeah, well. Oh.
No, I'm not. Just want to clarify, I'm not a U2 fan. Anyway.
I don't know. I don't know. I just sort of feel that is my biggest problem with the film, is that I didn't really feel a great deal towards the characters, thematically speaking. And again, I think it boils down to the nature of the construction of the film. And it was sort of really desperate to sort of make you be sort of taken aback by these sweeping vistas, these underwater shots, this underwater technology, which is clearly fantastic.
Yeah.
And I have the utmost sort of admiration and respect for all those involved in the construction of those things.
Yeah.
I can't feel that sort of kind of connection to those kind of things if I know they're not really real.
Yeah.
And again, I'm sort of trying to think of an example where I've seen things like that before and it has had an impact on me, but I don't know.
Like a computer. I mean, Gollum's an alright example.
Yeah.
But he was more of a tortured soul. And none of the Na'vi in this film are really depicted as being bad.
No, and they're all, I don't know, like, there's no sort of, if we sort of talk about the film thematically, obviously it's about Cameron is, by his own admission, a vegan and environmentalist.
Yeah.
And this film is probably far more blunt in sort of showcasing that than its predecessor, I would say.
Yeah, definitely.
And I guess that's maybe why he shifted it to the ocean, because that's like a big sort of debate at the moment about the sort of health of the oceans and how that is sort of...
Yeah, actually, that's true. It's funny, the whole conservation...
theme?
Yeah, or just sort of consciousness is going towards the sea now.
Yeah.
It used to very much be about the Amazon rainforest.
Yeah.
And now
Fuck
it's...
the Amazon.
Yeah.
No one cares now.
It's all about the oceans.
Yeah. You've had your time in the sun, Amazon.
Yeah.
You're off
right.
now.
Yeah, you're fine. We fixed you.
Yeah,
we planted loads of new trees.
Yeah.
No worries.
You capybaras have to deal with it yourself.
Yeah.
No, there's just no... Yeah.
Back to the plastic in the oceans.
Yes.
The turtles.
Yes.
Oh no. But yeah, and that that carries across into the sequel, because 2009 it was all about the forests, and now it's all about the oceans. And which is probably one of the reasons why he very quickly made them leave their original kind of home and no, go to the reef people now.
I mean, it's admirable, I guess, to sort of have that strict belief system about something that is really important. Yeah. But it's just the way that he applies it in the film. I'm not sort of entirely sold on the execution of it. Again, the effects might play a part in that, but I think it's more narrative than anything else.
So
I think that's where my issues lie in terms of the thematic execution of the film.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think another thing to touch on, and again, going back to this is a big old spoiler, although I can't even remember the character's name. This is another thing. There is a Jake Sully's son at the end.
Oh, yeah.
He dies.
Yeah.
And it's meant to be this big emotional swelling moment. It lasts for about 10-15 minutes.
Yeah.
They're so upset about this death, and I'm just there thinking, I've spent no time with him.
No.
And his other son, we spent quite a lot of time with him, and he identified with him because, well, he makes friends with that big whale, doesn't he?
The big whale.
The big whale.
The mathematician whale.
Yeah. He makes friends, but like you're spending time with him. So if maybe he was the one to go, might have felt something a little bit more. And it's strange to me that he decides to kill off one of the others, like the person you spent the least amount of time with, and then expect you to be really upset.
Yeah.
Just sort of didn't work.
No.
It was weird.
No, I just think the whole...
Maybe a studio note, I don't know.
Yeah, well, quite possibly. I mean, I guess if you're going to spend time with an arc of a young Na'vi fella finding himself by hanging out with a whale.
Big whale.
I guess you probably don't want to kill him off. It's probably...
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. 20th Century Studios are just like, right, James, we got just one thing.
Yeah, we've got to keep the sort of whole family happy.
Yeah,
if they're going to cry, they can cry about someone that barely had any screen time.
Yeah.
Which they won't do for that reason. I think there's another argument to be had there, or discussion, should I say, about the thematic worth of the film, given that I imagine filmmaking isn't the sort of best for the planet. Certainly a big blockbuster spectacle such as that.
So I just remembered this. It's interesting that you said that. They hired a bunch of Amazon server farms to render this film,
right?
Because of the like huge amount of computing power you need. They're gonna need some big old warehouses with like walls of computers to render all of the frames. It took about, I think, something like 8,000 real-time hours to render one frame. Obviously, if you sort of take all that data, shove it into a big render farm, it'll turn into about an hour. But that, I mean, I'm assuming that ain't good for the planet.
And this is the thing. I mean, it's an interesting thing to touch on, and I guess it's sort of, you have to sort of preface this by saying I feel like, and with myself, we're all. Say myself and say we're everybody. Yeah. But I think in the Western world, by the virtue of your existence, the things you take part in, you're a hypocrite.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm massively hypocritical.
So it's not us saying that we're sort of completely absolved of this, and we're not necessarily attacking him for at least having the desire to do this, to bring these things to light.
No,
it's more just that, given that blockbuster filmmaking is a mammoth task that requires a lot of resources, a lot of which I'm not sure how much. I mean, I don't know. Knowing him, not knowing him obviously, but knowing his sort of his moral compass and the things he cares about, maybe that was a consideration.
Yeah, maybe it was,
but I don't know. It just doesn't sit well.
Yeah, it's strange to me to have it sort of shoved down my throat. Not that it shouldn't be. Maybe it is something that needs to be kind of brought to the forefront of culture. And in fact, it definitely does. But at the same time, it is just like, well, what are you actually doing? Are you taking part in some kind of green filmmaking initiative? I don't know. I haven't heard anything about it. And you'd assume that if they did, they would brag about it.
Yeah.
Because it's a big
thing.
Yeah. Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man 2 did. And I remember that being all over the marketing for it. Was just like, hey, this was like a zero emissions film. Everything that we... and then I don't really know what happened to that. But yeah, strange.
I think it just sort of... I guess it sort of speaks about what we want from mainstream films. I mean, do they have the power to do that? Not only because of the potential for contradicting oneself, given the size and scope of the process of making the film, but also our audiences or mainstream audiences, which would encompass a wide scope of people of different lifestyles, beliefs, experiences, etc. Are they really going to be as moved and impacted as much by a film like this to make positive changes?
Yeah.
Stop them from putting their sort of cans in the non-recyclable bin. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I often think, when I think about film's impact, it's sort of, I think as a viewer, I sort of feel guilty of these sort of temporary moral realignments.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where you sort of come out of a film and think, I'm going to make this positive change in my life, and I'm going to
forever accept.
Yeah. And then 2 weeks later, you don't even realise you're doing the exact thing you said you wouldn't do. Out of convenience, or because you're not in the right frame of mind, or I don't know. This might be getting a bit too deep, but I just think there's something to be said there about the impact that film has on us and our sort of moral compass and our behaviour. And I think it definitely can do, and definitely has done. Yeah. But I think the more money that's invested in a film, the harder that is to have a lasting impact on you.
Yeah.
You specifically. No, but I think that's an interesting point that's worth at least discussing, which we have done.
Absolutely. One other thing, I kind of feel like I'm reeling off things that annoyed me about this film. One more thing that annoyed me, that weird yellow goo that they got out of the big whale.
Yeah, the big whale. Yeah.
And the explanation was that it makes humans immortal.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, or some aging thing. Yeah, I don't really.
Why?
Just explained away.
Yeah.
I tell you what, this is just something that's just come to me, but the writing was almost Batman vs Superman bad.
Yeah.
In terms of the way it just explains away these obviously quite important things, because the whole reason for the sort of whole reason for the existence of this sort of crusade to another world is not only because Earth's dying, obviously that was going to be the case, but also that so we can harvest some yellow fluid from sort of like whales that can compose music and solve algebraic expressions. I don't know, it just doesn't seem, and it's explained away by Jermaine Clement, which was a weird sort of cameo for him. I mean, no disrespect to him. I mean, you take the jobs where they come, don't they? But,
it was odd to see Flight of the Conchords man in the biggest film of all time. Like,
as a marine biologist.
So strange. Yeah. A lot of points in this film were just like, this needs to happen, therefore we need this. Okay, let's make another reason for why humans are...
I wonder how much of a criticism that is, because I guess, like, when you're writing a film like this, obviously, a lot of the time, the sort of mechanics of why things have to be a certain way are going to be pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But I guess, even by their standards, it's still too obvious.
It might have just sort of slipped through the net, because they had a lot to think about, I guess, and they were just like,
that's true.
Let's hope no one talks about this in a
in
a small room in England. Shit. What else? Something that I did think was quite impressive, and I want to proceed. I want to kind of preface this by saying, on the whole, I didn't like the high frame rate technology.
Yeah, I thought the same. Yeah,
it took, like you said to me, it took you out of it. Because it is jarring. It's like you're seeing it at regular 24, you see all the motion blur, and your brain is kind of hardwired into, because we're sort of predators. You need things that move, like your eyes trained to kind of look for inconsistencies. Once they get underwater, I actually thought it was quite good. I was like, okay,
this makes sense.
Yeah, it worked, but they used it too much at the start. Just don't. I
can't go about that opening was. There's an attempt in the opening, isn't there, to sort of anchor in the themes of family, which kind of run underneath all the more important environmental stuff.
Yeah, the family thing.
Yeah, maybe in like sort of Cameron's eyes, it sort of interacts nicely with the more broader sort of themes.
True, it's a universal thing, isn't it? It is. Family. That's why. I mean, he's probably thinking, Christ, this film needs to do well internationally.
Yeah.
So put something in that everyone, no matter where you're from, is a part of, whether you like it or not. So I get why he put the family stuff in there, but at the same time,
nauseating. I think it didn't. I don't know. I think you might be right, because I think there's this suggestion that the Pandora is almost like a sentient being. The planet.
Yeah.
It's
A big
like a sort of deity
network.
Yeah, like a network, like a sort of network of plant life and animals that are all sort of in it
together. Yeah. And when you die, you become back part of that life again.
Right.
That makes sense as a sentence.
Yes, I thought so. I mean,
No.
that's the thing as well. Like that. I don't know. Like, I feel like if you're going to really thematically give that film a bit more of an impact, I don't think it should be so easy to win against this enemy, because in both films they sort of roll these guys over pretty quickly with like elephants and fucking whales and shit.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I mean, obviously I know that they have to win, because obviously if it ended pretty badly, I think a lot of people would be scratching their heads thinking, what's the point of that?
Wouldn't make as much money, that's for sure.
But again, I think I touched on it earlier, but that lack of sort of risk for the characters, for me, the lack of risk for the planet, I don't know, it just didn't sort of sit cohesively in the narrative, or indeed the sort of thematic intention for me.
Yeah, so all the humans are really tiny, aren't they? So, so it is like you would, again, I'm sorry to kind of paraphrase you earlier, but you just said that there was no peril, which was true. There wasn't. No. They were just bugs that to be squashed. Human being. There was no kind of nuance to them. Apart from Spider, who, as a character, kind of annoyed me a little bit.
Well, he was like the sort of the human representation of the Na'vi kids, wasn't he? And again, that sort of new age hippie thing is just grating.
He really was also weirdly indestructible.
Yeah.
His like just rolling down the big boat thing at the end and just kind of getting bruised and battered, whereas like other humans are just kind of like flipping off the side of boats. Yeah.
I guess that's sort of part of the parcel of the blockbuster, though, isn't it? You have to accept that some characters are more robust than others in order to facilitate grander narrative designs. Okay, good. So overall, lukewarm at best.
Yeah, I've been a bit harsh, because I did ultimately. It is entertaining, and it is very big, bright, and colourful, and is like a lot of people have kind of described it as a bit of a tech demo.
Okay.
Kind of an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
Far too long for a tech demo, but
of course,
the underwater stuff's amazing, and Cameron's indulging himself massively. He loves water and he loves blue. And this is the perfect film for him.
If anything. Obviously, it's doing incredibly well, so it's not just for him, but it seems that he's someone that is clearly very, very passionate about both the themes and bringing that technology or bringing to life these themes and ideas through the technology that he employs.
Definitely,
And standing currently at?
It's grossed worldwide 1.401 billion as of the 2nd of January 2023.
There we go.
My God, it's going to be alright, isn't it?
I think it's safe to say that we're going to be seeing a few more Avatar films.
Yeah.
Because one thing audiences like is repetition.
Ooh, yeah.
Some kind of consistency. I mean, Marvel, ragging on Marvel again, but Marvel's whole structure is built on that. It's familiarity and consistency with the themes, ideas, and execution of those things. So
it's like when you go on, if you've ever been on holiday and you find a restaurant you really like, and then you go to another one and it's not as good, and then you end up just going back to the same restaurant again because you're just I want to go back to that first one. It's like that. It's the same kind of innate human desire and kind of finding comfort in repetition. Yeah.
So moving forward, what is the legacy, do you think, of these films? What do you think Cameron can expect in terms of, because we've talked about technological brilliance. We've talked about Cameron himself and his legacy that he will leave on the medium. But what do you think? I mean, because we were joking about this before when we came out of the cinema, but the only thing I can think of that Avatar has given legacy to is the porn industry. There's so much Avatar porn.
Yeah.
Not that I've looked. No. I haven't, honestly.
Just heard about it in an unrelated article.
Yeah. Someone was saying about it, and I just, wow, okay.
But that's strange, because I remember when the first one came out, there wasn't even that much merchandise.
No.
There was like a pair of pajamas I saw once that had like Avatar on it. I was working in BHS, nobody bought them, and they went off the shelves really quickly. And that was it. I was just like, all right then, I guess the Avatars come and, kind of came and went.
This is what I'm trying to piece together about the film, because like it's performed so well, and yet it doesn't have that sort of, I don't know, like it doesn't seem to have the sort of, like, it doesn't live rent free in many people's heads.
No.
In terms of like how they would, if they talked about some of the landmark moments within cinema.
Oh man, Titanic's much more likely to get.
Yeah,
brought up.
exactly. Yeah.
He succeeded with that in kind of getting that into drilling it into people's skulls, and it left a lasting impression, and that's one of the ways that I defend the film, is I'll just say like, well, it's clearly everyone's favourite film for like a year and a half, and it's just you can't stop it. It was like a kind of unstoppable force.
I remember that. Was it 97?
997. Yeah.
Yeah, I can remember
about,
that even then as a
Yeah,
7-year-old. I mean, there's lots I don't remember about my childhood, but for some reason,
yeah.
you went to most of like your mates' bedrooms and it was on the wall. a
Yeah,
poster.
yeah. Bizarre, and yet the same isn't true for Avatar.
No, you're not going to see Avatar posters on the wall, are you?
No.
Is it because, I don't know, like design-wise, you can make toys out of it? I don't know.
Yeah. You can make little, bows and arrows. You could get.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity for merchandise there, but
Maybe it's not the point of it.
maybe not. I mean, yeah. I guess the idea is to stop people using plastic and things.
Brainless consumerism, yeah.
So maybe that's taking it a step. That would be 20th Century Studios taking it a step too far, and maybe that's kind of weirdly honourable. Or is it because people watch it, clock out, think that was all right, and then go and get on with their lives and don't. It doesn't.
Yeah,
It doesn't
that's true. Interesting.
Strange.
Right.
Questing the cinematic void.
So in typical Cineboy Cinema fashion, we are already looking ahead to the next film to discuss at length, in detail,
Ooh, baby.
which is
After Sun.
After Sun, a lovely film
Yeah.
that was out tail end of last year, maybe, was it November we went to see?
Yeah, I think it was limited release. We
Limited
caught
release.
it in Bristol, but it's going to be released on Mubi.
Indeed it is.
The
6th of January.
6th of January.
I was balls up. 6th of January. Really, it's just an excuse for us to talk about it because it's a film that had a real impact on both of us, and that's something we really want to share with
Definitely
a small portion of people that have listened to this. But we just want to say, we're back, and thank you for getting to the end of this one.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone.
Yeah,
It's
thank you
been
very
nice.
much, and
See you next
Happy
time.
Christmas and New Year.
Happy
Could
Christmas.
you say that now? Is that allowed? Afterwards?
Let's say it.
We should have said it at the intro, really, but
No,
there you
yeah.
go, you've got it there.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you back in hopefully about a fortnight's time.
About a fortnight. Take care, everyone. See you
Bye-bye.
later. Bye bye.